The MTG podcast is a virtual space for women and men in the tech and creative industries.
Tune in as we put it all on the table, sharing authentic life truths as we sustain and empower each other in search of our tribe.
We're more than a designer. We're more than our name badge. We're more than the work we produce.
Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast.
We're that tribe.
Well, hello. Welcome to a very special episode of the More Than Graphics podcast. I'm Danielle.
I'm Cicely.
And together we make this harmonious tribe called More Than Graphics. And I absolutely love the fact that as we continue to grow into this amazing season 5 of the More Than Graphics podcast, we also get to share some really cool and surreal things with people. In one of them, happy Women's History Month, everyone. And that includes you too, dudes. I think it's really important that as we continue to echo this conversation in and around the presence of women, the legacy of women, and even women in tech, right? Women creatives, which is what this podcast is created for, that we just continue to uplift, continue to prompt, continue to push forward this platform of women. So I'm really excited today because we have a person that has embodied that her entire life. Her legacy is the empowerment and the embodiment of pushing women forward, especially in the realm of tech. So thanks for joining us live on Facebook or YouTube today as we continue to celebrate and discuss the theme of March for Women's History Month with trailblazing women in tech. So I just kind of want to get the conversation started, Cicely. Since the last time we've chatted and quite a bit, but I want to see, have you seen any difference in changes in how we celebrate Women's History Month so far?
I'm just seeing a lot of really good, social media efforts by especially women-founded companies, women-run companies. So it's really funny that almost every company I've ever worked for in tech has been female-founded, which I didn't even think about until until about the other day. I was like, wow, literally there's at least been one female founder, if not everyone was a female who founded the company. So I'm like, that's really cool to think about. And it's really awesome to be able to be in that space as someone who never had any connections or ties and thought I would ever work in tech because it just wasn't my thing. I've now, because the world's evolving and because healthcare is evolving, things like that. I now have found that tech is my home. So this is where I thrive and where I'm comfortable, and I can still do all the things that I'm good at and love to do in this space. And I absolutely love working for women. So that's another change that I've kind of seen, that there's just this push. It's so much better to work for women. The ideas are different. The way that we do things are different. And that's what I didn't know I needed in my life. So I'm just really excited to see where women in tech will continue to go, and to see how many more women become founders of companies and really just, blow the lid off of the femtech industry, the health tech industry that I'm in specifically, and just really the rest of the tech world and contribute to, life as we know it. So I'm excited about it.
Oh my gosh, yes. I feel like the march is on, right? And we don't even notice it, how much it's become part of our everyday life and living now.
Exactly.
That is such a dream, right? To think of where we were 50 years ago, to think of where we were 20 years ago. I just feel like that legacy that we're leaving behind is sustainability. We're here and we're not going anywhere. So we're going to continue this march. I'll be playing puns on March, the word March, for the rest of this episode, so everyone knows. So as we talk about this topic of March, I actually wanted to kind of share some base stats on women in tech. This is from explodingtopics.com. As of 2023, women hold 26.7% of technology jobs. As of that number, out of that number, the 27%, 56% or 79,163 women are women of color working these specific technology jobs. Mid-sized tech sector companies have led the way in promoting workplace diversity, boosting more than 53% of the industry's leading employers. So it's just something to kind of wrap your head around as we were looking at, this number maybe 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. We'll even get closer, the time that you were a kid to the time that you're an adult, right? That number has incredibly changed. And I do think that's because women are being more aware We are advocating for each other and with each other. And I do believe that that number will increase incrementally over the next 10 years. I mean, I hope this number does more than double. So I definitely want to bring on today's guest, who is, again, a founder, a pioneer in tech for women. Cicely, would you like to introduce Kimberly Bryant?
Absolutely. Kimberly Bryant is a Memphis, Tennessee native and always thought of herself as a nerdy girl. She loved math and science at an early age, and it drove her passion to pursue a STEM career. Bryant was enticed by the early technology of microchips, personal computers, and portable cell phones. She worked for numerous companies in the electrical, biotech, and pharmaceutical fields, such as Pfizer, Merck, Genentech, and Novartis. Once Kimberly founded the Black Girls Code, a nonprofit organization that focuses on providing technology and computer programming education to African American girls. Bryant was listed as one of the 25 most influential African Americans in technology by Business Insider. Welcome to the originator, the founding mother, Kimberly Bryant.
Yes.
Hi.
Kimberly, we are so excited that you're here. Like, this is so cool. We're all geeking out, just so you know. Like, deep down, each one of us are like, wow, she's here. She's in the space. She's like alive right here. Let me just start with just saying, one, your bio is amazing. And I feel like it's not even a fraction, really, of the impact that you have left on brown women. Let me just say that out loud. Not just Black girls, but brown women specifically. So I really want to just like applaud and continue to have these open conversations in and around creating that space for more women in tech. So I kind of want to lead off with this topic as we talk about March. Like, when you started out, what was some of the pushback that you received as you excelled in tech?
That's a great question. I think I love the statistics that you gave, Danielle, at the beginning of the podcast, because it kind of centers us and in a way to, what's the possibility for growth and opportunity in the area, but also really centers us around how far we have come. So I think, like, for me, in reflecting on like where we were almost 11, 12 years ago, when I had this idea of creating a space that really centered Black girls in the tech industry. There were very few of us that looked like you and I and Cicely. Like, we weren't in the space, and we certainly weren't in the space in roles of leadership. So less than 5%, well less than 5% of women were really in the tech industry, and even less that were in leadership roles. And so for me, I thought that there was a necessity, not even just a need, there was a necessity to create an organization that would not only nurture and give these skill sets to young Black women so they can become the future leaders, but that we could start to have a conversation. So sort of like to kick the door open on the conversation of like, why are there not more women in these spaces? And certainly, why are there not more women and people of color who make up such a significant part of the population and demographics in the U.S., but we're not represented in the leading industry that's driving innovation? And that was like really my focus and goal, was to create a pipeline, yes, but also like to really force the industry, if you will, to discuss the elephant in the room, which is, there are no people from marginalized communities that play a significant role in what's being created from technology, or who are leading these eras of innovation in this next global revolution. And I think that, and I thought, and I still do think, that is a problem that we need to continue to focus some energy and effort on solving.
I love that. And I love the fact that this continues to be an ongoing thing. It's not something that's just a temp fix, or we put a Band-Aid here, or we started the bridge, but we're not really using the bridge yet. We'll just put a, do not walk sign yet and just leave it there for visual purposes. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that this is an ongoing thing. Just because we started doesn't mean we are finished. We are still moving toward that goal. I just love that visionary thinking, because that's a kind of a taboo almost subject, even for women in tech. It's like, I'm here. and then that's it. Like there's no more, there's no ... there's no therefore, there's no, and then it's just, I'm here. And I love the fact that the way that you speak about the evolution of women continues the ... It adds the and or. What is it called? The YAR statement, the and or, and if.
Mhm.
I love that because I feel like that is very inspiring to me. When we talk about women in tech, a lot of times we're referring to, Women's History Month, but the history part actually is the living part of us continuing to do those same movements every single day. So today is history, tomorrow is history, things along those lines. I just love that powerful language that you use in regards to that. I feel like that's very advantageous. And for a lot of women in tech, I would love to know, like, was there a certain type of mentality or phrase that you had to kind of armor yourself with when you're walking into these spaces where you had to represent marginalized groups?
Yes, that's a great question, Danielle. I would say there's a trait and there's a mindset. So like for me, the trait was like resiliency. I think for a black woman, but maybe even just as a person from a marginalized community, this notion of resiliency is like key, like because there are so many biases and I want to just say prejudices and even just right now racism that seeks to keep us out of certain rooms and out of certain opportunities that persist. Like this is 2023, and I look at what's happening in the world around us, and there's as much blatant racism for me as it was for my mother growing up in the 50s and the 60s. So like I think that we have to have this spirit of resiliency to push through, even when folks are really doing everything in their powers to keep us behind. And now these tools are baked into our systems. So most of the times when I look around at issues that are happening around us that are disadvantageous for equity, there's some systemic issues that are at play. It's like we have to look a couple layers below the surface because there's a systemic thing that we have to disrupt. But I also want to say that the spirit of self-efficacy is vitally important for me as a Black woman, because they're more than, and I don't even say a fraction of folks that want to tell me why I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm a Black woman, because I show up in this body and this entity every day, and folks don't want me to show up this way. Folks don't want me to speak a certain way. Folks don't want me to have a certain self-confidence about knowing how I want to move forward and make change in the world. And I think that is the same for every single Black woman, and especially a Black woman that is an innovator, a creator, a leader. There's so many cards stacked against us. So having a sense of self-efficacy, that you know what you know and no one's going to tell you any different, is vital to our survival. I don't even want to say success. I want to say survival, because there's too many ways that we get lost in the system. And I think having this sense of self-efficacy, of knowing who we are, knowing what we're capable of, and knowing that we have everything that we need already from the Creator, is the most important piece of our survival that we can hold on to.
Wow. Like, I don't even know how to follow that. I mean, there's so many good nuggets here. The goal was to enforce the industry to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And we talk about that on an everyday basis almost with this podcast, because there is multiple elephants in the room. The elephants of having our voice be absolutely vital to a conversation in and around our male counterparts. The elephant in the room being a person of color coming from a marginalized group or community. That is an elephant in the room. And unfortunately, still racism exists. It's going to be around for a while. So until we start learning to make it smaller by dismantling it, that will continue to be the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like it's one of those situations where you continue to push forward despite the pressure, right? The pressure to be just as good as everyone else in the room, the pressure to conform to the ideas and ideals of others. And then also that society pressure of just being a person that looks different from everybody else. I just so relate to a lot of those feelings. And I'm sure many women and men who are listening to this episode can relate to that. If you are listening out here in the audience live today, feel free to say hi in the comments. I just want to pop that in there. We'd love for you to ask a question if you have one for Kimberly. But I just kind of want to circle back to some of those initial kind of views, if you will. So that defining moment for you, when you realize that your success, everything that you have created for women, especially for Black women in tech, can you share like a defining moment for you and you're like, wow, okay, I did that?
Yeah, I mean, there've been quite a few. I think sometimes, 2020 is a lot easier than when you're in the moment. So I think now that, I'm in this process of building, something new and envisioning like next stages of my career, I have a much clearer vision of how much impact that I actually made in the moment. Because over the past 10 years, I wasn't really focusing on what my impact was. I was trying to like build a business. I was trying to build a business that was creating change for our particular community. I was trying to grow and scale this business. So I wasn't really as cognizant of like the impact, how significant the impact was. And over the last few years, I definitely started to take a closer look at it. But I think for me is in seeing girls that were part of the program, that were part of Black Girls Code, that are now either in college and thriving or starting to come out of college and go into these roles at some of the largest tech industry providers in the world, that I see like the impact. But I also see it when, like at times like this, either Black History Month or in Women's History Month, but it's certainly very prevalent in Black History Month when I look up and I see like little 7-year-olds writing a report on Black Girls Code at Kimberly Bryant. I'm like, wait, how'd that happen? Because I see the work as being really historical. Like I always said, the work that we were doing was revolutionary, but I think that also the work that we're doing is historical because it really created an opportunity for young people, Black people, boys and girls, to see themselves as innovators in a way that they maybe not had before. So like I could look like these kids' mama, and that's great because, that's who kids reflect and look up to. So seeing a Black woman that could be your mama, maybe I could even look like somebody's grandmama right now, but maybe a young grandmama, but I'll take it. But I mean, that's great because just think of the impact on a young person who opens a history book, or they maybe not open a book now, they Google something about technology or innovation, and they see someone that could be their mother, their sister, their grandmother, their auntie. That's powerful. And I think for me, that's been a defining moment for me and reflecting on the work and the impact of the organization that really supersedes like all the accolades and all the things that we did in growing this business. It's the impact, the historical impact in creating this, unabashedly self-confident organization that focuses on Black girls. And I think that's been probably the most, I wouldn't say the humbling part of what I consider to be my legacy is the historical impact of the work.
All right. I know I've talked too much. I'm waiting for you to sleep. I'm just like, I could go on forever.
I'm just soaking it all in. I was taking notes. I even wrote on my little Post-it, but oh my gosh, there's so much of what you said. It was just so profound. And as someone who kind of how I mentioned, I never thought I'd work in tech. I think it is so important to see people that look like you or your aunt or your mama or your grandma so that you can see that example. Because now, very much like you said, like if our children see us do these things, like I have a teenage son, he's 13. But when he can see me working from home, working in tech, using, I always joke like I don't have 800 degrees. I'm working on my third. But like when he can see, mom doing all these things, but also building a life that's flexible, that, I'm happy with, I think it's so important because I didn't have that example. Like my mom's amazing. And again, she's crazy amount of degree, like 4 degrees, all, hard worker, very smart woman. But like tech was never her thing. That was never anything that I heard like growing up. So I graduated high school a little less than 20 years ago. And that was just something that wasn't, like talked about in my family. It was something that nobody did. And if they did, they went very much like the engineering kind of mathematics. And I am not an engineering math kind of girl. So I was like, well, I just don't think there's a place for me. I don't fit in this world. So as an adult, when health tech started to become a thing and like more people, there was more access to people that look like me, younger people who were making career pivots as well, like then it made sense. I was like, there's been a place for me here this whole time. I just didn't know about it because I never saw anybody that reflected who I was, like my personality, the things I like to do. I never saw anyone, in my general kind of my general bubble. I never saw anyone who reflected those things. So that just, it made me think about mentorship and how important that is. It made me think about just really being a young girl, being a young person, especially in a marginalized group, a person of color, just being exposed to as many positive role models and influences and different jobs, because now I'm trying to like push my son into pursuing something in tech, or, he's very much into video games. So like coding and programming, which is not mom's thing, and that's okay. But I have like the aptitude now where I work in those spaces with those people, clearly getting to do this podcast interview with you, where I'm like, I know it's possible. And there's people that look like us, that are successful, that are excited about the work that they do, that are making, the contributions that you see for Roblox and Minecraft and things like that. People that look like us are helping to build your favorite games that you won't stop playing and that get on my nerves. But
I mean, I think about
it's amazing.
This standpoint, like I remember this one incident that I went to a screening of Hidden Figures, and I probably saw Hidden Figures. I promise I probably saw about 10 times. So at least, like I went and we were taking girls from Black Girls Code from all over the US to these screenings. But I remember vividly one particular screening I went to with my daughter. So I had seen this movie. I had seen it first. Then I went to a screening and brought my daughter Kai. And I noticed that in one part of the screening in the movie, she was crying. And I, noticed that she was crying. And I don't remember what part, and maybe the part where Taraji said, I bring this cough, you don't see me. I don't know what it was. It was some part of this movie. There were so many touching moments, but I noticed that my daughter, who was about maybe 18 at the time, she was crying. And it made me cry because I recognized at that moment that she saw both the women in this movie that were trailblazers, but she also felt that as a young woman who is in tech, who is in STEM, and there was a connectedness, right, to the past, to me as their contemporary role model, to her present. And it brought me to tears. And I thought about how important, the movie was incredibly important because it showed all of us that we've been here all along. We weren't seen, but it also was significant for me in that it made my focus on the work even more focused, because it was we weren't seen, and now these girls know that we've been here before. But this is a way. This is I want to say this is our charge. To me, that movie was passing the baton to me and these girls, okay, it's our time to take it further, right? And to make sure that we're never not seen again. And I think of that in everything that I do, even, over the last 10 years and the things that I'm doing now. It's about how do we take the work a step further? We've been here, we've done the work, we have made advances, but I think for all of us, you, myself, Cicely, Danielle, it's our job to push the needle a little bit further for the next generation. That's what I believe is our job. It's we need to push the needle, and we may not see the results of our work right now. If we're lucky, we can. But I think our work is to make the pathway a little bit easier for the next generation. So, we don't have to have these same discussions in the future. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yes. Just I had to clap. I mean, that's amazing. And I really love that you were able to have that moment with your daughter and just really kind of reflect on, just like you said, that we've been here the whole time. Like, we all know that, especially when, it comes around to Black History Month, every little kid learns, Black, white, Latino, doesn't matter. Every kid learns all the contributions that Black people have made to the society. It doesn't stop at peanut butter and light bulbs and, stoplights and, feminine products. Like we've been here, like you said, we've been here. But one of the important things, like I just wanted to kind of circle back to, since we mentioned like that mentorship and how important it is to have someone who sees you and who looks like you and that recognizes you and, speaking of being seen, and who can see you for who you are. How would you say that teaching and mentoring young Black girls in tech has changed your life? And then how did it change kind of the vision that you see for young women in tech for the next generation?
That's a great question. I think for me, the mentoring piece of it has been the most fulfilling part of this, if I consider it my life's work, is being able to be a mentor and being able to create mentors for others. So like, I think for the girls that were part of our program when we were building Black Girls Code, being able to have someone who maybe came from our hometown, same hometown, or, went to the same college as, or we were looking to go to, that's what I'm thinking in the mind of the girls. Like, here's someone that's going to Stanford, Berkeley, and those are the aspirational places that our girls want to go to. And majoring in engineering, like that is a significant motivator, if you will, motivator for the girls, is that if this woman who looks like me can do it, then I can do it too. And I reflect on that in terms of my experience of being a woman in engineering, which is also a very male dominated field. And the very first Black woman that I just I don't even want to say, it was just a random serendipity. I ran into another Black woman on campus in my freshman year who was also an electrical engineer. And she was a couple of years ahead of me. And she was this big, tall, majestic, supreme looking sister. And that became one of my closest friends, but also one of my very first mentors. And if it were not for meeting, this mentor who's now a professor at University of South Florida, I don't know if I would have made it. I don't think I would have stayed those 4 years because it was difficult. But I knew that if this woman, who was also another Black woman that looked like me from the South, from family, like Christian family, Baptist, she played basketball. I'm too short to do all that, but still, like having a role model, if you will, that I could create this mentorship relationship with, it was vital to my survival at Vanderbilt. And I wouldn't have made it through without that. So I take mentorship like really seriously because I know how much of a difference it can make, because there's so many places that we kind of fall through the cracks if we don't have someone to give us that lifeline, a hand to pull us back. And so this core of mentorship, and then also teaching our girls how to mentor each other and become near peer mentors, is extremely powerful, because I've seen girls that have gone through our program that they were the mentees when they were 7 and 8 and 9. But by the time they're 18, they have mentees of their own within the program. So the girls are looking up to them, and it becomes a very beautiful cyclical process of mentees becoming mentors and then giving back in ways to kind of create the next one of them. And that's very, very powerful in the circles of women that I've been a part of. Cicely, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. But that's exactly kind of what I wanted to hear, your experience with mentorship. Every Black woman I've ever known in any field, but especially in fields where we're not where we're not equally represented, or, hardly at all, they've all said the same thing. Like, that has been the key. Like, no matter what you do, get you a mentor. Even if it's like a profession we've been doing for years, get you a mentor, because you're going to need someone to bounce ideas off. You're going to need someone who understands you when you're in that space and no one looks like you and no one speaks the language. No one knows the head nods and the, the mm-hms. When no one knows those little nuanced things, you're going to need somebody to bounce those ideas off of, and like a place to feel like, you're at home, like a comfort zone. So I think that is amazing that you mentioned that.
Now, I do want to put an emphasis on the fact that there is a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So oftentimes women and Black women, marginalized folks are over mentored, under sponsored. And because I spent so many of my years in corporate America, like this is a big thing for me. This is like an Achilles heel. Like we have to have mentors and sponsors, and there's a difference. So like the mentor is someone that you can kind of share everything with. It could be a near peer. It could be, someone that's in a position higher than you. You could either be in a person that may not be in a position or level less than you. Like mentorship can have a very broad definition in terms of where that comes from. But a sponsor is a person who has access that you don't. A sponsor is someone who can open up doors for you that you don't even know that exist, and can be in the room and say your name in places when you are not there. We as women, all women, but also we as Black women in particular, we must have sponsors as well as mentors, right? Because this is about moving the needle, creating change, getting access and opportunity. That is something that sponsors have power and, access to do that a mentor may not. And so I think that I just couldn't let that go by. We have a lot of mentorship opportunities, but in my opinion, we still don't have enough opportunities to have sponsors, folks that are going to help us get to that next level and help us break through the glass ceiling in the ways that our male counterparts do.
Sister Bryant, you ain't said nothing but a word. But 100%, I understand. I've received the message. I understand. I love that you said that and that you differentiated between the two, because there is a big difference, especially for marginalized people, women of color, definitely.
Yeah. I think for me, especially when I look back on my career in corporate America, the way I was able to get to the next level, like many of those times, it was because I had sponsors who had authority and had positions of power that could say, oh yeah, well, and this actually happened to me before. Like my boss gave me one rating on one calendar year, and my sponsor, who was his boss, was like, nah, like she actually belongs up here, and made that change and overruled my boss to move me up based on the things that I had achieved that year. And so that's the difference in, what a sponsor and a mentor can do. That sponsor can push you into places that, just your skills and talents may not necessarily, open the door. Like they're going to push you up there. They're going to allow you to have a seat at the table. And you need that. We need that as women just as much as we need these mentorship relationships.
Wow. I mean, I gained a lot from that conversation, and I've been in this game for a while and I'm still learning. I love the fact that I'm a constant student, constant learner from these very transparent conversations that we get to have, on this podcast. I love the fact, one, thank you for sharing a lot of transparency and just understanding that in order for us to move forward, we have to hear these gems so that we can grow and move forward. So the whole mentorship, breaking down the differences between the two, is revolutionary. And I also figured out that I'm more of a sponsor than I am a mentor. So I'm just like, wait, what does that mean for me?
Well, that's great. I think that's great though, Daniel, because I think that once we get to a certain level of access and privilege, that's our job. Like we should become sponsors. And I think there's been a lot of opportunity for me to do both now. It's I can still be a mentor, and I try to do as much when I'm asked, but I'm also, in many times, just as you said, like a sponsor. So as many as like, oh, like here's an opportunity. Let me make an intro for you, because, or sometimes I was like, hey, there's this opportunity over here. Let me give you some names of folks you need to reach out to, and I do that just as much. And I think that's an honor to be able to do that. So like, I want to say like to you, like, oh, if you're being sponsored, that's great. Like, keep going. Cause like, that's an honor, because we haven't always had the access or opportunity to be sponsors. Haven't had that power. And I think that's a whole nother 45-minute conversation we can have about how power looks on Black women.
Don't tempt me.
how we use it. And I think that's an important conversation, because now that we start to see Black women in roles of authority where we do hold some power, we have to be able to use that power responsibly. And like I said, like, that's a whole nother 45-minute conversation.
We'll book that for later, but I definitely want to pin that conversation, because that's a good one.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the fact that you continue to go on a little bit more as we're like taking notes here. When you mentioned the hidden figures, I mean, oh, my heart just kind of melted, because one of my kids did a report on Katherine Johnson, and it was literally the month that she passed. We did not know, obviously, she was going to pass in that month, but he was so proud of his report that he did a whole poster board of all this information, and they watched Hidden Figures and they did all the things, and then she passed, and he was very mournful because he knew already so much about her life. And I love the sentiment that he gave, which was, she lives strong and well. And I thought that was so like impactful to me, just from watching my child go through this process of learning about this woman he had not really known before. So the fact that he absorbed that, and then very shortly after she had died, and once that legacy was triggering in the news and all these pieces, people were celebrating the legacy that she left behind. Those were the words that most profound, out of the mouth of babes, right? Like, the kids say the darndest things. So I thought that was very, very like, wow, profound. So I totally relate to that moment where you can see that representation of yourself in your children's eyes, but also better understand, like, they have to take up that baton. They're the ones that are going to have to take the charge and continue to pass that on to their children, their great-grandchildren, when they go to see the next big historical film on the IMAX theater, that they're going to also sit in those similar chairs and kind of have a tear-jerking moment where they recognize this was the call to action the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, so I have like an off-dar question, but I think it's still relevant to kind of who you are as a person. What do you do for self-care? Like, and how has that evolved a little bit as you've grown in your legacy?
That's a great question. So, like, in reflection over the past 3 years, I came to the realization that I did not do a great job at self-care.
Who does? I mean,
Oh my gosh, I did such a terrible job. And I was forced to, kind of reconsider like how important self-care is. Like, first during the pandemic, then during the year following the pandemic, and trying to get back to normal, and then having a traumatic year in business. Like, it was a lot going on. Let me just keep it real. Like, there was a lot going on for me over the past 3 years, and it was a bit of a roller coaster. But I really believe, honestly, the thing that sort of like saved me, if you will, through it all was this opportunity to get back to nature, like literally. Like, I used to be in San Francisco. I moved to Oakland, and in my mind, that's the suburbs, because I was in the middle of the city, but it's really not. But it's kind of suburban for me. But what it did was gave me an opportunity to get closer to nature. Like, we have all these beautiful walking trails, and I've been able to do that, but also just being able to spend time in nature, like in my domain. Like, I'm an avid gardener now. And so I didn't really have an opportunity to garden when I lived in a small little condo. I moved into Oakland, and I have. And like, that's like a hobby and an obsession. I want to say it's a little bit of both, but it has allowed me to like kind of reconnect with nature, and how much nature really is a healer. and whatever way you want to engage with it, whether you're, out in nature and you're an avid bird watcher, you're hiking, or you're like me, a gardener, or whatever you're doing, outdoor sports, like nature really is a healer. And for me, it's certainly over the last few years has been healing for me. And so just spending time in my garden, that's how I renew. Like I came off of a week of travel this week at South by Southwest, and it's always exhausting. It's not just tiring, it's like exhausting. And the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh my God, I could be home for the weekend. I'm just going to spend time in the garden. I'm just be in the dirt, and I'll make all these pictures and I'll post them on social media. But just being able to like get back to nature, like, and deeply get back to nature is one way that I have really indulged in self-care. I will also say I used to be as a kid an avid reader, and I haven't read like as many books as I have lots of books. I just don't take the time to read them. And now just in getting back to nature is like causing me to slow down on many other things as well. When picking up a book, and not a Kindle, like I like to flip the pages, like I'm old school that way. But I feel that also is a way to, engage in self-care. So like, in just really this whole notion of soft life I was reading about the other day, and I was like, yeah, like that sounds good to me. Like finding ways to still build and be a business person, but also like I want that soft life as well. I want to be able to go at a slower pace and to do things that feed me and feed my soul, and just feed my mind even. And so those are some of the ways that I've started to retrain myself, because I have to, because I'm a recovering workaholic and I still feel like a little bit of that. But I understand it's like a retraining. It really is. And how to really, I don't know, like take care of me and not just, so focus on the mission of building that I'm not going to be okay at the end of it. Like, no, like I want to still be able to enjoy some of the fruits of this labor as well. And that doesn't have to be monetarily. I want to be whole. I want to, as your son said, live good and well, and finding ways to do that.
Oh, I love this. I think this is absolutely magical, because I do feel like as we approach our golden years, we should be in this area. I'm not trying to put words in nobody's mouth now. But I'm just saying, as we approach that era of living, I feel like it's really important that we do take into consideration, our bodies, the timeline of our lives, and our bodies and our minds, and understanding that transition is a graceful one. It's not something that's demeaning in any way. It doesn't mean that something's wrong or something's backwards or something along those lines. It's just the era of life that we're entering into. And for some people that can be a little jarring. Movement forward always is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a level of like acceptance and embracing, and like you said, kind of falling into this natural cycle of the next thing, the next phase, whatever that is. So I love that you take that on so gracefully, because not a lot of women in this industry, let alone women period in that age range, do. It's a little bit of a fight, a pushback, right? One foot in, one foot out. But I really do like embrace and applaud that, because that's for me. Like when I get to that point in life, I really want to be able to be like, you know what? Let's go. Whatever that is, I'm gonna put my backpack on, put my sandals on, I got my Crocs ready, like we out. Because I want to take on whatever that adventure is. Yeah. I want to be able to take on whatever we feel like is a mountain for us, to be able to slowly but surely climb it. Mm-hmm. So I like the adversity of the challenge, but also understanding and embracing that those challenges vary, right? And they're different, and they're kind of contoured toward our lives. Like if we had a really hard early beginning, you may notice that it's a lot easier to acclimate up the mountain, because you've already built the endurance in those earlier parts of your life. So I really commend you for being able to say, you know what, whatever that step is, I'm ready. I'm starting to embrace that a little bit more. Bless you for that. Because again, not too many women are kind of in that phase. They're definitely still more in that I can still work. I can, and not to say that you're not, but I'm saying in general, like they're still very much in that corporate mindset. And I like the fact that you are starting to kind of relax that just a little bit and be like, I can do this soft life and continue to advocate for my values and my core beliefs.
Now, like I said, it's taken me a while to like get here, and I'm still, especially because I'm always of this phrase like builders build, and I do consider myself a builder. And so being on the path of building again, I'm like, oh, I'm building again. Here I am in that building mindset again. And, you know, the all-nighters, you know, here and there and like here and there and everywhere with traveling and trying to build. And so I get it because I'm a builder, and I builders like to build, and that's certainly me. But I also am really focusing on like, oh, I'm building 10 plus years later. Like it's different now. And I'm like, I feel those 10 years, but also I feel like I learned some things in that 10-year journey, and I want to build different. So like, I'm like, yeah, like I want to build different this time. I want to be able to stop and smell the roses a little bit, and, you know, like take my head up above water a little bit more. And I think we deserve that as Black women. And so like, I think we grind because we don't have a choice. You know, we're trying to make traction and make a way, but I think we deserve more. And so like part of my next endeavor is to make sure we get some more. But I also feel like I got to embody that as well. It's like, let me figure out how to build different this time. And then let me create opportunities so that other Black women and other people from marginalized communities can build different as well.
Oh my goodness. I mean, this kind of leads me, I'm glad that you said all of these last little 2 sentences, because that's exactly where I'm going to go.
All right.
We talk about what the next step is for someone in your stature. What's your next phase, your next adventure? What's your Web3 that you're kind of moving on to here?
So you're curing me up a little bit. I want to say that, you know, you kind of hinted on something, a very important piece for my next journey, like in the intro this morning. And when you were talking about ownership, either you or Cicely were talking about this thread around ownership. And when I was, you know, like transitioning from my role as a nonprofit founder, I really was kind of sitting with this notion of like, okay, what do I want to do next? And where do I get joy in my work? And part of it was working with other women and creating opportunities for Black women to have access and opportunity. There was that. As I said, I'm a builder and builders build, but I also love talking to other builders, creatives, and innovators. Like, it energizes me. I love it. But I also thought that there was a gap. Like, what we did well was create opportunities for girls to learn these skills that were going to be very, I want to say, in demand in the future in the innovation economy. But we didn't do as much in creating opportunities for them to figure out how to create a pathway or a business or an opportunity for themselves. Like, we did a great job of creating this really valuable tech pipeline, but I'm like, no, I don't want to just create the pipeline. I want us to own the pipeline. I want us to be the pathway because we are the business owners. And I feel so strongly that if we're going to change this generational wealth gap that we see, this racial equity wealth gap, like, we can't just go to work for Google, or we can't just go to work for Meta. We can't just go to work for Microsoft. We have to own those companies. We have to be the leaders of them. And I, even now, looking at how much less is being focused on DE&I and these corporations, like, well, yeah, like, they don't have to, you know, invest in that anymore. So we need to see, if we want to really see change, we have to be the ones that are creating the companies that are the next Facebooks, the Twitters, et cetera, so that we can write the changes into those systems. And so part of what I'm focused on now with the Sin Ventures Tech is creating several different initiatives and businesses that will help us to address this racial equity wealth gap through ownership. So that is my central thesis, is like, how do I create other Black business owners that look like me, that look like you, and not just to give them mentoring and advice. I want to write a check. So yes, you know, part of this is creating an avenue to invest in these businesses. if Black women are the fastest growing segment of business owners, and we're getting the least amount of financial investment, that's a problem. And so part of this work with Ascend Ventures and Black Innovation Lab, which is an initiative that we're creating this year, is to circumvent that pattern, to create some diversity in the investment space so that these businesses that are created by Black women and marginalized communities are getting the investment of capital and resources and opportunities to scale and grow, and to create better opportunities for ownership in the Black community.
Oh my gosh, like chills. And I knew about some of this beforehand. So every time I hear it come from you, it's just like, there it is.
Yeah, I learned a lot over the last 10 years, but more so than anything, I learned that we're still being overlooked. We're not being, we still haven't got that 40 acres and a mule, right? Like we ain't got it. And so I need to figure out ways to disrupt this industry and really create more opportunities for us to own things. Because if we talked about history a lot today, but like if we look back at history and the times when Black communities were thriving, it was at a time when ownership of Black businesses was at a peak.
Right.
So like it doesn't take a history. It's very easy to see that if we look at Black Wall Streets in the Black places where Black Wall Streets were all over the U.S. There was Black Wall Street in Memphis, not just in Tulsa. There were other places where these very vibrant entrepreneurial communities of Black businesses were thriving. And that's when many of these communities were at their best and lived good and well. And we kind of lost that a bit during the mid 60s and into the 70s. And so I think now is figuring out a way to get back to that place where we had greater ownership and greater success in building these vibrant communities. And like, I think that is this last focus of my work, is really creating an opportunity to do that.
Oh my goodness, I love every second of this. The advocacy, the intention, the purpose, the urgency, all of it is just so empowering. And I am very much hoping that we're listening to this message, men who are listening to this message, people of color who are listening to this message are picking up what we're putting down. specifically Kimberly, because I mean, she is passing this baton. It is silver, it is gold, it is all the colors. And I just feel like this is such an empowering conversation in and around innovation. And I really hope too that as women are starting to come to in some areas in and around being bolder, stepping out, advocating, stepping up even in areas, that we can also continue to, again, pass that baton, that we really can. And that's the part that I feel like a lot of women in tech feel kind of lost, or maybe maybe not want to say uneducated, but just unknown about, right? That light hasn't shone bright enough for them to see that, oh, there's an option here.
Right.
And that's something that I've even recently talked about personally in some series of emails that are coming out recently about that journey, like seeing that spotlight. No one else saw it, but I saw it. I'm going to keep following it, and it's led me here.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so incredibly powerful for women in tech who feel like there's no light. I'm in this spot, but I don't know how else I can push forward. Maybe there's not enough resources, there's not enough sponsors, and not enough mentors to kind of be in that place. There are spaces for you. Just reach out. I think the first step we can possibly take is just being vocal about it.
And then I think so finding your tribe and your community, which is what I love about this pod, is that I think we're often like pitted, especially as women, we're pitted against each other and told that we can't build together, but we can. I think that's a way that they keep us in a certain little categories, because we're taught to compete against each other rather than to build collaboratively. And I think of that in the Black community as well. Like we come from this history of collectivism, this mindset, like that is built on collectivism, which is not like the capital mindset of winner take all. So
Mhm.
how can we reclaim that historical DNA around building collectively so that we lift up everyone in the community, not just one singular, but talented tenth? Like, no, like I'm not talking about building like that. I'm talking about how do we build in community where we rise all of the ships, not just a singular point or a scattered few. And I think that's how we really create generational change.
Hey, Callie, thank you so much for your comment. She is thoroughly enjoying this conversation. I really appreciate that. I really also want to have people find you, connect with you, follow you, and all the cool things that you're doing. How can they do that?
Oh, okay. That's great. So I am, as I said a couple times, I'm very active on social media. So you can always find me on social media at the number 6 GEMS, GEMS, and that's on most of the social media platforms. But you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn as we launch this new venture with the Sin Ventures and Black Innovation Lab. You can find us at sinventures.tech. That should be launching soon. And just really reach out in any of those portals because we're looking to find collaborators, and I want to say conspirators that are like of the same mindset of like building and creating opportunities to create generational wealth and create opportunities for communities to thrive as well.
I love it. Every ounce of this conversation has been so fruitful from head to toe. Callie, I know you have more questions and we're going to answer those probably in the comments, just so you know. But I want to go ahead and go straight into our flash questionnaire. So if you're new to the space, we do a flash questionnaire for every guest where you just tell us the first thing that comes into mind as we ask you these random questions. So let's do it.
Don't be scared. It's not that bad, I promise. Okay, so something new you learned in the past year. So a life lesson, hobby, or a fun fact.
Oh my God. See, I just so terrible at this because I overthink it. I don't even know.
It can be gardening related. Just anything you've learned in the past year.
Oh, wow. Something new I learned in the last. Let me just say I learned about Egypt. I took a trip to Egypt and I learned all about the kings and queens of ancient Egyptian history.
Okay, that's amazing. That counts. See, that's what we're talking about.
All right.
Your favorite vacation or getaway spot?
Oh, anywhere on the continent of Africa.
Wonderful.
Anywhere on the continent of Africa, but most recently I was Egypt, but South Africa, Morocco, anywhere on the continent is my favorite place to vacation.
That's amazing. Sweet snacks or savory snacks?
Savory.
Okay. Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Ooh, Harry Potter.
Nice. Digital books or physical books?
I already answered that. This is a book. It's a physical book for me. I won't turn some pages.
Okay, I agree. Like I think 99% of our guests, it's physical books. Yeah. If you could go back in time, where would you go and who would you see?
Oh, I may sound crazy, but like I am such a history buff. I feel like I was born too late. Like I should have been out there in the 60s. Like Black Power is me. Like I go back to the 60s and I want to talk to Malcolm X. I want to talk to Malcolm.
I think that's amazing. There's nothing wrong with that. I love that. You're a revolutionary spirit. I love it.
That's why it's like it may be crazy because that was a crazy time, but like, listen, I feel like I would have been out there. And I asked my mother this, like, why was you not out there on the that is my spirit. So yeah,
I love that.
Surprise, Kimberly. We had people say Harriet Tubman.
Ooh. Yes, Harriet Tubman was our last one, and I was like, okay, Harriet, yes. Very much. I love me some Harriet Tubman.
A little bit more or maybe a little bit less radical if you would, depending on
right, depending on the scale of radicalness. Right. I agree. So what is your love language? So like how do you like to receive love?
That's a great question. Really great question. I want to say affection, like a physical affection. That's me for receiving. I want to be like, give me a hug. I love it.
You love to be embraced. I love that. See, that's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Endorphins, serotonin, all the good stuff comes from that. And then last but not least, the best part of being a grown-up.
Freedom.
Absolutely.
Freedom. Just be able to be free. That's the best part of be living life. But I would say freedom. It's about freedom.
Absolutely. Doing what you want when you want to do it. I'm 100% yes.
Man, this has been absolutely magical for me. I don't know if anyone could tell, like my cheekbones are like sore because I'm smiling so hard. Kimberly, is there anything additional you would like to share on the mic today?
No, I don't think there's anything. We touched on a lot of different things, but I just want to say for anybody who is listening, like for me, like this, every year said like I kind of like want to say like a word is my word for the year, and for like multiple years, my word has really been this thing about grace, like and understanding that life is a journey, and you're gonna go through ups and you're gonna go through downs, but learning how to embrace giving yourself grace, and then learning how to extend it to others, like that is the key. Because you can do grace and show grace and extend grace to yourself and others in the valley, you can absolutely do it on the mountaintops. So learning how to cultivate a spirit of grace will get you through more things than you can ever imagine. And so that would be my last and final word.
Oh, man.
And it was a word. It was a word. That was amazing.
Yeah. And reach out. We're about to launch. So look out to.
I'm going to be following you on the channels, on all the things.
And like, if you've been a partner in the past or love the work that I've done in the past, I would love to work with folks again and build something new and very impactful for our community. So reach out and look for connection. Looking for the connections.
I love this. It's all about connecting. I hope that some of these words that women are listening to today really, really, really connected today. So I really am so thankful for your time and your grace, Kimberly. Thank you for your wisdom, your legacy that you've left behind, the call to arms that you've left behind for plenty of other women and people of color in tech, period. Thank you.
Thank you both for having me today. Thank you for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. We're honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to the More Than Graphics podcast. We invite you to subscribe and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Send us your feedback on Facebook or Twitter on how our life stories and our virtual safe spaces are helping educate, empower, or encourage you. As always, visit our website at mtgthepodcast.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive behind-the-scenes moments like Clubhouse, happening twice a month at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So until next time, everybody.
And just like that, the episode ends, but the convo has just begun.
Thanks for listening to the MTG podcast.
We want to hear from you. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it a review on your listening app of choice.
Continue to follow us across MTG socials.
And look out for bonus content releases throughout the year. This podcast is produced by Octane Design Studios.
Until next time, friend.